Thank you for joining us both in person as well as on Zoom virtually. Friday Forum and Conversation Café is a partnership between the University YMCA and the Office of Diversity and Social Justice Education. And both of our offices are located in this building if you ever wanted to come visit us. We'll have some time towards the end of today's presentation for some questions and answers. For those of you in the room, we'll pass the microphone around at the end. And then for those of you on Zoom, feel free to use the Q&A function or the chat, and then we can also see those questions. And then after the presentation, we're also going to ask you to fill out an evaluation form. It just helps us to continue improving this program. So we would really appreciate everyone filling that out. And we're going to start off with a video today, so I'll go ahead and get that started. I'm just making sure that the virtual audience will be able to hear as well. Okay, we should be good.
Illinois is one of 16 states without parole or conditional freedom for prisoners. The Democrats hope to reinstate the parole process next year, but it will not be an easy task. WGEM's Capitol Bureau Chief Mike Militich sat down with advocates who say people deserve a chance to re-enter life.
Over 5,000 people are serving life in prison in Illinois. The majority of those incarcerated are Black or Latino. Critics say this is due to Illinois leaders removed from 1978 to have big sentences that are any proposal in Springfield to allow someone to go through the parole process if they're 50 or older and have served at least 12 years in prison. And would make a statement about why they are discretionary.
We see them as just as not a person. Second hand.
Sorry, it looks like the audio is not working. So I'm going to reshare.
New at 6, Illinois is one of 16 states without parole or conditional freedom for prisoners. And Democrats hope to reinstate the parole process next year, but it will not be an easy task. WGEM's Capitol Bureau Chief Mike Militich sat down with advocates who say people deserve a chance to re-enter normal life.
Over 5,000 people are serving life in prison in Illinois. The majority of those incarcerated are Black or Latino. Critics say this is due to Illinois leaders removing parole in 1978 to have fixed sentences that deterred crime. But a new proposal in Springfield could allow someone to go through the parole process if they're 50 or older and have served at least 20 years in prison. Candidates would make a statement about why they earn discretionary reentry.
We see them as just as much personal deserving second chances as you and I would deserve second chances in whatever it may be.
Mark Summers has helped dozens of women at Central Illinois Correctional Centers find a better meaning in life. He started to work as a lay minister after he retired in the 80s. Summers says anyone could have a life-changing experience, and many he has helped found new meaning for life. Crushion Stubbs says the wait to get out of prison can drain you until there is nothing left. He was incarcerated for 27 years for murder, but Stubbs says he had to start hoping for a better future. That's why he wants people to have the opportunity for parole, a chance for introspection on crimes committed years ago.
You now start to identify and realize what went wrong, what happened, how much I've changed since that time, and you begin to make sense of this nonsense that happened.
Stubbs is now an organizer and peer mentor for people released from prison who ask for resources from First Followers in Champaign. He points people in the right direction to find housing, transportation, and jobs. But Stubbs is most proud of his work with groups who speak up for those impacted by mass incarceration.
If the possibility of change is there, and it's always there, why would you not review it? Where's your stick of measurement? Even in science, the only way you know something is growing or progressing or advances is through measurement.
The movement to reinstate parole has gained more attention over the last year with support from Chance the Rapper and Common, among others. But advocates note it can be challenging to pass this plan during a time where reentry is politicized. Still, they stress parole is not guaranteed release for anyone. It's just the opportunity to appear before the Prisoner Review Board.
I just wished that some of our politicians had more heart when it came to areas like this.
The legislation to reinstate parole gained support from some Democrats in the House and Senate last session. Sponsors hope it can move forward later this spring. Reporting in Springfield, I'm Mike Militich.
And our Capitol Bureau requested an interview with the lead sponsor of the proposal. However, a spokesperson for Representative Carol Ammons said she wasn't available to speak on it until session starts next month.
All right, thank you. It is my pleasure to introduce Amber Scarborough, who is going to introduce our speakers today.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out. My name is Amber Scarborough. I'm a graduate student here at the U of I. I'm also part of the Reentry Guide Initiative through the Education Justice Project. The Reentry Guide Initiative provides guides and resources to incarcerated and previously incarcerated individuals. We have 2 guides, Mapping Your Future and A New Path, which are here. If you have any questions or want to take a look at them, you feel free to. And we also have worked with First Followers, and as well as the EJP program. First Followers also focuses on reentry, and we've worked with them through our advisory council. And as clearly seen by the video, First Followers has done vital work with reentry and support for incarcerated and previously incarcerated individuals. And we even presented them with our Advocacy and Leadership Award in acknowledgement of their work in the community. So I'm here to introduce you 2 vital members of First Followers, Marlon Mitchell and Crushion Stubbs. Marlon Mitchell is the founder and executive director of First Followers Reentry Program. He is also a doctoral candidate at the UIUC's College of Education. In his spare time, he enjoys spending time with family and watching sports. Crushion Stubbs is an organizer for the First Followers Reentry Program and the Fully Free campaign here in Champaign. Incarcerated since the young age of 19 for a total of 27 years, as a newly released resident of Champaign, Crushion is an active leader and advocate for people directly impacted by the criminal legal system. Thank you. I'll pass it on to them now. Thank you so much.
And if you want to come on up here.
Thank you. Wish I could have called my freedom like that. All right, so let's make some good use of our time together. Here's a riddle. What's the difference between Bigfoot and a successfully stable returning citizen? Easy. In the history of mankind, there have been more sightings of Bigfoot, a creature that probably doesn't even exist, than there have been sightings of successfully stable, formerly incarcerated people whom actually do exist, which poses the question, how can people from all walks of life, from all over the world, see something that most say isn't even there? Bigfoot, Loch Ness, UFOs, but not even a fraction of these people can see me, identify me, or spot a person like me, a returning citizen, at high risk of economic insecurity, as if I'm Ellison's invisible man. There's been an overall failure in society to behold or even acknowledge the very existence of their own returning citizens, struggling to transition out of one prison only to be trapped and confined
in another prison after prison. You see, across the country, many state legislators have passed laws to strengthen penalties for having a felony record. This intended tilting of the playing field through dozens of small decisions in state capitals in every corner of our nation are the very bricks that built this prison outside of a prison, and is being done right under our noses. Most of us don't even have a clue, nor understand the political process or our influence on it. I mean, I'll be the first to admit, in the past, I'd crack open a legal book only to find the legal jargon in Latin so complex and hard to comprehend, or I'd often just feel too small to affect any real change in such a big, loom, intimidating system, feeling like, what difference does it make? My vote doesn't count anyway. This whole thing is rigged on account of the system is broken. However, I now realize that the system is not broken, but indeed is running exactly according to its designer's plans, which is why we find ourselves now asking, how did we get here today with so many legal barriers and regulations and restrictions on the books against newly freed people? Were we all that asleep at the wheel that we just snoozed on a job of legislative coat checker? Believe it or not, as citizens and voters, a lot of us are in the dark and unaware of the sly slipping of unchecked harmful bills into laws, and totally oblivious to the countless hoops and high hurdles that previously incarcerated people must jump through and over once released. For instance, how many of you knew that a newly released person is prohibited by law from even finding housing to reunite and live with his own children and family in public housing, often years and decades after they're absent in their life? Something to ask yourself and think about is, who benefits from laws like this that overwhelmingly keep poor Black and Latino families apart? And what are the long-term implications of this kind of policy? Or others, like say ones that find returning citizens ineligible to earn certain occupational license, permits, certifications in the earnest effort and attempt to become more employable and gain some sense of economic stability in this hell of a difficult transition from prisoner to productive citizen. This being the case, I hope I'm making some kind of sense to you, because these are just a few of the thousands of restrictive laws against people with records nationwide, people who have paid the price in full for their past transgression, but are still being penalized for it, years and even decades after their release. Here's an eye-opening but not so fun fact. Contrary to popular belief, these punitive laws aren't some sort of collateral consequence or secondhand harm or even a byproduct of incarceration. No, these are intentional policy changes that were created to bar and target people that are directly impacted by the criminal legal system. Which means you and I both know that these bills aren't just appearing mysteriously out of thin air now, are they? Of course not. They are methodically thought of and thought out, planned and executed as legal prejudice. And I'm here to make you more aware that this injustice is being acted out on your watch and in your name, historically by political representatives of you that are crafting, introducing, and voting for these legal barriers against overwhelmingly poor people of color. Need I remind you that right now, this is the month of February. And if you choose to purposely allow it to, the history of Black people in this country, highlighted in the shortest month of the year, can actually serve as a rear view mirror of proof to you that legislative weapons, such as the ones I and so many other formerly incarcerated people face daily, are nothing new in the toolbox of legal discrimination. And as a country, we know this because historically we've seen it before in the form of Black codes, redlining, Jim Crow laws, and now permanent punishments. Same thing, different name. This retributive nature of lifetime punishment and barring overwhelmingly people of color from any advancement unfortunately is a familiar foe, which is why we know how to attack it. For example, in my daily work as a civic engagement organizer, my job is to aid, inform, and mobilize the public and marginalized people to be proactive in seeking out equality and justice for all, because I believe that everyone deserves to fully participate in society as a free person to access housing, education, employment, and opportunity. Yet Illinois leaders have continued to restrict the basic human and civil rights of people with records. They have told people with records to rebuild their lives, but without help, while continuing to pass laws that impose impossibly high hurdles to doing so, which is why the Fully Free campaign was created, to dismantle these laws and regulations that govern permanent punishments, which are the barriers that deny or restrict rights and opportunities for people with a record long after their involvement with the criminal legal system is over. In this campaign, we want to activate directly impacted people across the state to become more involved in the political process, empowering them to make the very change in the system that will affect their lives and so many others. We want to equip, educate, and grow and expand our network of people who are no longer willing to sit by idly and allow this injustice to continue. For that very reason, in the months to come, we'll be holding local learning and base building events that I welcome any of you to sign up for and attend by contacting me or just going on the Fully Free website to join us in eliminating these barriers that are intentionally set up to handicap the newly released and restrict people's rights. I say, let's all work together in righting this wrong. So in my brief time on the front lines of this kind of work, I've come to learn firsthand that advocacy only has one direction, and that's forward. So if you're someone who's up with moving forward, then I excitingly look forward to working with you and connecting. Because I think we all can agree as citizens that if we're to encourage law-abiding behavior, then it is essential to make the pathway to practicing that kind of behavior one of ease, not one riddled with roadblocks to becoming fully free citizens. I understand historically, elected officials and a significant number of the voting public have traditionally viewed people with felonies as some racialized other, going so far as to draw stark lines between us and, oh, that's them, which, if it wasn't so sad, would be laughable. Because with so many elected officials having been arrested and convicted over the years, these lines are so blurry as to nearly be non-existent anyway. In fact, so many of us now personally know someone who's been affected by the carceral system, whether it's the young man in the neighborhood, the old classmate you went to school with, or even a relative, that soon enough, no one in this room will honestly be able to refer to those affected by the system as us and them, because we all will have been affected by the criminal justice system in some way. This fact alone should help to undermine the political appetite for punitive sentencing and institutional discrimination, but it hasn't. In America, we punish people with criminal records long after they've paid their debt to society, and we all suffer for it. People given the promise of a second chance at life upon release quickly find themselves assigned to purely punitive existence. It's like playing a figurative game of freeze tag. Once they get their hands on you, they want to keep you frozen in your stage of misstep, which is why I think it's important to stress here that it's highly hypocritical to tell someone to change their ways and correct their mistakes, only to then turn around and solely identify them by that mistake, framing it to be their main story, and then using it as a tool to permanently convict them over and over again, legislatively, brick by brick. And to illustrate this point a little clearer, think with me here for a second and look at this. I got locked up when I was a teenager, and now they're using that record to determine who I am today. That's akin to your doctor using your teenage medical records to diagnose your adult self today. Now, how illogical is that? You know, when he was released from his past and he actually thought that he too was free, the great American philosopher Michael Corleone once said, Just when I thought I was out or free, they keep pulling me right back in. Sort of like the snowstorm from 2 weeks ago, or even this that we're dealing with today. They made sure to clear all the main roads, but failed to plow all the side streets. And yet it didn't matter how bad you wanted to leave this behind and get out of it, you were stuck. And so whether we realize it or not, we all suffer for allowing this cycle of legalized discrimination, poverty, and reincarceration to remain in motion by the nearly 50,000 laws and regulations nationwide that restrict people and opportunities for people like me. Did you hear what I just said? I'm not alone by far by being harmed by these permanent punishments, which lead to detrimental society-wide effects. Even my elderly grandmother suffers as a result from these punitive laws. And I remind you, it's so important to get a handle on this. Did you know that here in Illinois, it's against the law for my grandmother to have me, her own grandson, be the administrator or executor of her will, simply because I have a record? What this means is that a mistake I made as a teenager 30 years ago is not only being held against me, but being held against my family as well, as a weapon to prohibit me from carrying out my loving grandmother's last wish. Now, will someone please help me make sense of this blatant nonsense? What in the world does me having a record have to do with me fulfilling my grandmother's last wishes? What public safety issue is at work here? What evidence supports this kind of restrictive law? And how can they even attempt to justify its need? Clearly they can't, and often feel like they don't have to, because they know that this is just one of thousands of examples of a system being punitive simply for retribution's sake. Well, we say no more. In my current work with the Fully Free campaign, we've decided to combat this blatantly senseless discriminatory law by introducing the FREE Act, which stands for Families' Right to Estate Equity. This is an act meant to restore dignity and honor the families throughout Illinois to carry out the last wishes and affairs of loved ones. Families should be free to choose who takes on this sacred duty. People living with a record should be free to honor their family and fulfill their loved ones' wishes. In Illinois, only one of 15 states that has this particular ridiculous law. Over 600,000 people have a felony conviction on their record. This is 600,000 people and their families that experience further anxiety and stress by limiting their ability to choose a loved one who is best positioned to handle this responsibility. Our solution, the FREE Act, introduced as Senate Bill number 3098 and House Bill number 4490, removes language in the Illinois Probate Act that prohibits anyone with a felony conviction from serving as an executor or administrator of an estate. This will bring Illinois one step closer to dismantling the permanent punishments constructed from years of punitive and misguided policies. These restrictions trap the poor and people of color in invisible cages that extend far beyond prison walls and criminal courts. Cages that can lead to a lifetime of obstacles that undermine even the most earnest efforts and attempts at rehabilitation and redemption. Cages that send the message, you will never be a part of society again. Please trust me when I tell you, a felony record is the one gift that just keeps on giving. I can tell you from experience that it will haunt you forever. And no, I'm not talking about Ghostbusters, spooky, eerie type of haunting, but more like, say, when you use a cheap, low quality whiteboard and you use one of those red markers on it to write something out. You know what I mean? Watch the double entendres here. After you write out what you want to say on the whiteboard or finish your sentence, you attempt to erase it off the whiteboard, but what often happens, right? You can still faintly see the mark and stain of that stubborn sentence that you completed, but just won't go away. I don't care if you, Mr. Miyagi, wax on and wax off that board. That mark is not coming off. When you're trying to wipe the slate clean, start over, and you can still see the sentence that you fully completed, those of us who have returned to society from prison, this is exactly what it feels like for us and what's happening to us on the whiteboard of justice. We too just can't seem to shake or erase those stubborn marks, stains, or blemishes of our past, these sentences and letters, in particular the scarlet letter, a felon that you wear on your forehead, and the X that you wear on your back, simply because they just won't let it go. And I mean, if we being truly honest here, then I think we all can admit that none of us can stand it when our partners or spouse always bring up the one time you did something wrong, left the toilet seat up, didn't take out the garbage, maybe spent too much money, but they refuse to let it go. And so I ask you, how does that make you feel? This ongoing nagging and constantly bringing up your past. Well, imagine, if you will, that it wasn't your partner, but an entire nation's legal system that always brought up your past, held a grudge, or put your face in a mistake, like a pet owner does a dog when it makes a mistake on the rug. It never feels good when your past mistakes are brought up and used against you. Never. It's manipulative and disenfranchising, and it keeps well-intentioned people on the sidelines of the field of freedom, all because of a past misstep. And so I wonder if, as a society, we have the capability to both hold people accountable for their actions while also never losing the sight of their humanity and redemptive qualities. I'll be honest, I don't think it's too difficult of a task for a country to see this through. Do you? I mean, I figure everyone that's paid their price for their offense deserves to know upon their release that true opportunity awaits them in all facets of life without being legally targeted for disenfranchisement. Permanent punishments keep a person locked into their worst mistake and paves the way for significant inequality, which is why I invite everyone to start examining closer these discriminatory laws and regulations that are being passed right under your nose. In fact, I challenge everyone in this room now to start examining these not so kosher bills. Try holding it up to the light for once. Read it, look at it, and see for yourself what it's really about. I mean, think about it for a minute. None of you seems to have a problem or take offense when your bill that you're trying to pass at the store, that $100, is actually being further examined, looked under the light, and held up for scrutiny. Well, if you don't mind the further examination of your bill, then why question having a deeper look into the damaging effect of all these other bills that are being passed off as helpful for our communities in your name, that are actually damaging hundreds of thousands of families? I'm telling you, it's going to take your effort. It's going to take our effort. So please don't mistakenly think for 1 second, well, that's great what you guys do, but no, not me. I couldn't get involved. That's the only way a wave of change is going to happen, people. And the crazy thing is, you already know this. Watch this. When they do the human wave at the football game, how does it even begin? If me and 10 of my buddies are in the back row and we get up and we do the wave, it's not going anywhere. Why? Because no one can see us way back there to even follow suit. Let's be clear. You have to be on the front row to initiate a wave. So all the people behind you looking down can follow your cue. But even then, if only 4 of my buddies are in the front row and we stand up to attempt a wave, guess what? It's not going to catch on. Hey, they may think we're just on our way to the bathroom. No, you see, it takes all of you, in the second row, the third row, the fourth row to get involved. So what am I saying here? That I don't mind being on the front row. We don't mind being on the front row. I mean, hello, we all call first followers. However, we are not lost on the fact that to make a true wave of change, I need all of y'all in those second, third, and fourth rows to stand up when we stand up. So we can move the crowd, move the voters, move legislation from injustice to restorative justice and trigger not just a wave of change, but a tsunami of change and difference. You see, the window of opportunity for criminal legal reform has been opened. The question is, are you willing to lift it a little higher, allowing that fresh breeze of justice to just flow through so we all can breathe a little better? Now's the time. Now's the moment for deciding what's to be done and then doing it. As it stands, we're dealing with a huge constructed mountain of miscarriages of justice that has a slippery slope. And if we're truly serious about changing course, it will require reckoning with how we understand the mission of our justice system. Is it punitive or redemptive? And how we view our fellow citizens who have acquired felony records at one point or another. As a society, we're ducking and dodging any conversation that reminds us of or points out the fact that these are fellow human beings. These are returning citizens, neighbors, women, young people, LGBTQ members, parents, elderly people, and just simply regular people like you and me. We have to change the negative narrative by taking a closer and honest look at who is a returning citizen, and then having an intimate discussion of human dignity and redemption. Because I'm here to tell you, the population of returning citizens are not just number on the page, statistics, or felony record. They are human beings. They are people seeking an equally fair shot at life. And by they, I mean me. And by me, I mean we. We are reformed people trying to reform justice. And so I ask, will you join us? Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm glad to be here. I think Crushion said a lot with this small snapshot of time that he had. And so his eloquent words really solidifies mission in a direction that First Followers is going. I was intentional with my bio when I wrote it for this particular talk, because I just wanted to be just short and simple, because I wanted to come before you all to just expound on that. I founded First Followers back in 2015, which is a reentry program, but I didn't include in my bio that I'm formerly incarcerated. I spent more time in prison than I did in high school. My first college degree I received when I was incarcerated. I got 2 certificates when I was incarcerated. And when I returned back to my community, I was somewhat homeless. I was sleeping on couches, I was couch surfing. I couldn't go stay with my mom because she lived in public housing. So there's a lot of repercussions that come along once you have an X on your back. I returned home from prison in 1996, and I don't want to date myself, but it took me almost 20 years to really walk into my purpose. In a sense, I was invisible for 20 years after I came out of prison. And I was invisible because all the things that Crushion just eloquently laid out. Whether you want to believe it or not, certain communities are disparately impacted by prison. In my time away in prison, I saw that firsthand, and I used that experience to really educate myself to answer the question, what's next for me? So since I've been home, I finished another associate's degree. I have a bachelor's degree in computer science, a bachelor's degree in industrial electrician. I have a master's degree from the University of Illinois. And currently, I'm on pace to finish my PhD sometime in 2022. Now, with all that being said and all the accomplishments that I have accomplished, there's a couple things along the way that I experienced to the extent that it really motivated me to leave a well-paying job in which I was working for 17 years for a Fortune 50 company. I was making really good money. I was taking care of my family, but I still felt empty and invisible because I wasn't walking in purpose. I've been discriminated against with housing because I have a felony conviction. But the Fortune 500 company that I worked for 17 years, I lied on the application. So when that application asks you, have you been incarcerated or have a conviction? Of course, I was tired of being invisible and I just wanted to provide for my family and myself and get myself back acclimated to the everyday things that some of us take for granted. I lied. I can say that now that I'm proud that I lied because I probably wouldn't be getting these opportunities that I've seen over the years. So stepping into my purpose of establishing first followers and being accompanied by like-minded people who have walked in those shoes, who have been downtrodden, neglected, stigmatized, and pushed to the margins of society, that's really galvanized the mission and the purpose of First Followers. So one of the models that we use oftentimes, there's two that I would like to share with you. Actually, the first one is those who are closest to the problem are closest to the solutions. So when I first met Crushion maybe about a year ago, I can tell that he had a passion and a purpose. But most importantly, he had a lived experience that many people do not have. So by him being able to step forth and eloquently articulate and convey his passion and his purpose, this is the work that we do. This is the work that must be done, not only for the small organization that I'm a part of, but us as a community. The second model I would like to share with you all is building community through reentry. And I'd like for everybody just to think about that for a second. Because when I sat down with my co-director, James Kilgore, some years ago, and when we decided to, get this thing off the ground, he and I just sat and said, okay, we need a model. And we just came up with building community through reentry. And so what does that mean? What does that look like? So we've been in this game for about 6-7 years now, and that's the purpose and the initiative that we always put forth and foremost, because there are marginalized communities out there, such as the one we're speaking about today, which is formerly incarcerated individuals. But how do we disseminate this message to a broader audience? And so some of the work that we are doing here in the community of Champaign-Urbana speaks to that. Because I'm a firm believer that advocacy has to start somewhere. And as we start to advocate for our own basic human rights and to try to understand exactly what's going on with our lives and why we don't have a seat at the table to determine where we want to go and what we want to do and what we need best for our own lives, that's problematic. I'm far from a politician, very far from a politician. I'm more action-oriented to the extent that boots on the ground, roll up the sleeves, get dirty, get a complete understanding, get on the front lines, and take a few arrows if you have to. But I knew that towards my journey, and I learned this again from James Kilgore, is that in order for you to have a seat at the table, you got to understand what the conversation is being had. So one of the things that I did, again, through education, I decided to go to Northwestern University to get advanced degree in policy analysis. While I was taking my master's degree here at the University of Illinois, I would drive up to Chicago 2-3 times a week just to go to class and turn around and come back home. That's how serious it was for me, because I needed to understand if I wanted to sit at the table, I need to understand what was being said, written, and how all of this works all together. So with my mentors and my leadership team, we constantly push ourselves to the extent that Crushion is talking about. We have to understand what's going on up under our noses. And one of the ways to do that, to really, really get a full comprehension that these things just don't morph out of nowhere. There's an intention and hidden agendas that are at work at all times. And so through advocacy and organizing, this is what we do in our community. And again, all of this is being spearheaded by a group of individuals, which many of them have been incarcerated. And that's where the reentry comes from. So that's what the slogan, building community through reentry. You know, my charge is to disseminate the information as true as possible and to motivate, instigate at times, and help people understand that we have to stay sober and stay woke. Because at the end of the day, the things that we see in my community are historical. It hasn't changed over time. Same, different methods, same intentions, regardless of what they say. I know James Kilgore is working on, or has worked on for a couple of years now, this thing called incarceration. And so he and I have talked about exactly what that looks like. And so now a lot of people are paying attention to what's happening with electronic monitoring. And I can honestly say through my own lived experience as far as being on the electronic monitoring after returning from incarceration, me and being naive, I was happy just not to be behind those four walls. Yeah, I had restrictions as far as what I could do, as far as when I could leave the house, what time I had to be returning home, and all those different things. But I was just comparing that situation with what I thought was an even worse situation. But in a sense, it's the exact same thing. And so, with a lot of that being said, the work that we're doing, the initiatives that we're putting forth is to galvanize our community to stand up, speak out against things such as these punitive punishment policies that are on the books that are draconic in nature. They've been there. Some people don't want to let them go, and some people don't think it's worth the fight. So, through advocacy and organizing, I continuously encourage everyone to at least inform yourself of what's going on, because one of the things that Crushion mentioned is happening on your watch. We have to be active participants. And just to change the direction just a bit, I wanted to talk about an initiative that we have with a problem that we see and we've been experiencing here in the Champaign community, Champaign-Urbana community, and actually nationwide, and it's this uptick of gun violence, of violence, community violence in general. So it's a problem here locally, to the extent that I think I saw a commercial, one of those tough on crime commercials by one of these governors or governor wannabes about how Champaign has had a 300-fold increase in gun violence in the last year. So that's the problem at hand that we're facing, and especially in the Black community. And so, again, my team and I, we've already started an initiative that is really conceptualized and designed to redress some of those actions that we're experiencing, or those situations that we're experiencing. So what we call that is H3. And H3 is an acronym that stands for harm, healing, and hope. So what does that mean? So through violence, whether indirect or direct or indirect, there's harms that are being caused. And we need to recognize and call out those harms and not just continuously sweep them under the rug. 1 minute it hurts and the next minute we sweep it under the rug and we move on with our everyday lives. But those are harms that have to be dealt with. And then we have to come up with some methods and ways of healing. And one of the things that we talk about all the time in ways of healing, we talk about trauma. Trauma-informed care, trauma-informed practices, trauma-informed everything. What does that really mean? And I caution everyone, just don't use this term, overuse this term until it becomes a buzzword. Because at this particular time, from my perspective, it has become a buzzword. Because I don't see enough change by exercising what we've learned about trauma in order for us to heal. There's a lot of broken people walking around here every day that have been impacted by some form of violence, whether that's domestic violence, sexual violence, gun violence, economic violence. There's all kinds of violences that we just kind of normalize and move about in our normal days. So the third H for that particular initiative is called hope. We have to start building back hope. And I think, following what Crushion and his words have said, that's what we're encouraging, to have hope. Because we know for a fact, if you can build hope into a downtrodden, pushed to the margins, populations such as people who have been formally convicted to a point where they have hope and they come out, want to be on the front lines and start swinging and make changes, we can do it with other populations and communities as well. So with that being said, I just again like to thank the Y for having Crushion and myself, giving us a platform to provide voice to something that we're passionate about and the work that we're doing and the work that we're going to continue to do. And I thank you all for just coming out and supporting us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marlon and Crushion. We wanted to move into some time for questions. I know we're running a little late, so if you can stick around for a little bit, please do. If not, I do want to remind you of our evaluation, and then hopefully we see you next week when Reverend Jennifer Bailey is here as part of the Illinois Interfaith Conference. But I'm going to go ahead and hand it back to you both. When you're answering, you want to be up here so everybody can hear you. But does anyone have any questions? All right, give me 1 second. And then if you can repeat it so the virtual audience can hear, if you can repeat the question. So that
Okay.
Hi, thank you so much for being here. So, I come from a non-for-profit where we're actually just this morning we're talking about it.
So we were working on our anti-discrimination policy this morning. So I guess the question we have is, how do we go beyond the fact that there's laws being passed and you can't discriminate against people with prior convictions, but make it something so in terms of work culture, we do more than just putting that on our work, like, okay, you can't discriminate against this. I'm sure we can do more. I'd like to hear some suggestions and things, trainings, tools that we can incorporate in our work environment to really help support this.
I'm gonna let Marlon answer that one.
All right. So the question is this on?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? I don't know everything. All right, so I'll speak a little louder. There it is. The question is, how do you move past, you're writing an anti-discrimination policy for your employment. So how do you move past just?
Like, I'm sure there's more we can do, right, internally in the workplace, where perhaps it's maybe training our staff to really think through how they, for example, we work a lot with students and actually in some cases with children, So we have to run background checks. What do we do when that thing comes back? You know, do we just say, oh, that, you know, flag it, or do we move forward with some sort of conversation to humanize this person who's doing employment? So we'll take any suggestions you have. This is important.
Okay, so there's some difficult, that's a difficult way to approach things, right? And the way what I mean by that is that I've been in that position, right? Where I've been a part of a hiring process that had a policy, but I also know that I have a criminal background and discrimination is real. And so first and foremost, trying to understand the culture of who you're working with, of the organization, and how serious they are about diversity and anti-discrimination laws or what have you. But unfortunately, as a society, and I don't, when you're talking about dealing with children or minors, you have to have something there. But long story short, given the situation or the circumstances, one of the things you have to do is individualize everything. Meaning, I'm totally against this broad brushing of the isms, right? So when you want to hire somebody, make sure you're individualizing the candidates, and that states that inside of the policy.
All right, I'm going to read one of our virtual questions. Okay, so I'll just we have a few. Okay, I might have to project because my microphones don't want to work. There used to be on Cunningham in Urbana a state work release program. Was that dissolved, relocated, or coming back?
I'm familiar with that. I think that it's not coming back. It was dissolved years ago, maybe 25, 30 years ago.
And then there is no public transit to the state prison in Danville. Would that help visitation, volunteerism, or in-state employment?
Question or comment?
That's a question. Yes. Let's scroll down here.
I'll take that one. Yes.
Perfect. And then in addition to reversing aspects of unfair laws, are there any aspects of the FREE Act to give preferential treatment or incentives to employers for some jobs in the criminal justice social work system?
What I would answer to that is, fortunately for the people here who came and attended fiscally, I passed out a fact sheet of the Fully Free campaign. So what I would tell you to get further information is to go to the website at fullyfree.org, and it would be a full explanation, and it goes in further. It's like a rabbit hole. So it'll answer all of your questions, and you can even pose some on there for sure.
And
yes,
then,
I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
Yes, Ann.
Thank you, Crushion.
Sorry.
I just want to ask, I'm genuinely moved. I mean, you're an amazing speaker, first off, but I'm genuinely moved by your call to stand up and sort of do that group wave thing. I think a lot of people are moved and want to do something, but we're not sure what the first step is. Like, what suggestions might you guys have? I mean, reading, that's one thing, but what else can we do?
Most definitely. I got a list.
Okay. I got you.
Okay. I was given this by Marlon Chamberlain, who's the director campaign manager of Fully Free. So obviously go to the Fully Free website, fullyfree.org. That's one immediate action you could do. To sign up for campaign updates and action alerts. You can contact your state representative and senator to support the FREE Act, HB 4490 or SB 3098. Number 3, you can contact me. I got cards here, just got them printed up, and to schedule a teach and lunch and learn to more about the Fully Free campaign. In the upcoming months, once the weather is a little bit nicer, like I mentioned in the speech, I'll be holding more learning sessions, base building events that any of you are welcome to come to.
and we could talk further. We could learn even more, tell you about how far along the bill is going, what little initiatives or actions you could take to actually help move it forward. And as you, I guess, as I said, but as you repeat it, get that wave going. So you can get a card out there. You can come right now and get a card from me. I'm building an email list and, you know, try to get you all involved if you want to, you know what I mean? If nothing else, like I say, you can be informed by going to the website. Great question, Ann.
And Marlon, I guess I would ask the same question of you. What support or what actions would Chris followers ask for?
So oftentimes where we start is just coming out and hang out with us, because we always have interesting dialogue about current events, things that's impacting certain communities. And so just learning from folks that are on the front line. And then also, like I said, it's a plus and a bonus when you have a diverse audience, because not everybody has the same perspective. And even having healthy debates help you formalize it helps you formalize an initiative that's going to be well thought out to the extent that you try to have all the bases covered.
Do you all have any events coming up?
Well, we actually do. He's a plant and you will be. First Followers presents Harm, Healing, and Hope. We're gonna have an event next week, Wednesday, February 23rd, from 6:15 to 8:00 p.m. over at the Champaign Public Library. Yours truly will be hosting. We'll have featured speakers, Aaron Ammons, who's the Champaign County Clerk, Dr. Will Patterson, Hip Hop Express Bus, James Tyler Corbin, social entrepreneur with First Followers, Dr. Regina Parnell, founder of Ready, Set, Go, Tamika Davis, who's a mentor community navigator with First Followers, and Nahash Wisdom, a hip hop artist and entrepreneur and inventor. So we ask you to please come out, have a ball with us, get a little bit more understanding. And I guess that also adds to your question, and as far as what you can do, you can also come and attend. Let's get familiar with one another. I'm new to Champaign. I need some new friends. So please welcome us all in and get involved. Let's get familiar with one another.
And then in the free legislation, do the children of incarcerated qualify for any assistance?
This particular act itself wouldn't really change that assistance, but what it would do is it would have an effect on intergenerational wealth. Because if I can't be the executive or administrator of the will, they're saying they're gonna appoint someone. And of course, they're not gonna follow out my grandmother's wishes as I would. So I could go on down a rabbit hole as far as the history and what's going on with the economic lack of stability for people of color because the lack of intergenerational wealth. And this act itself, or I should say the law that we're trying to dismantle, is breaking that intergenerational wealth, because they're saying, oh, we don't want you to, walk out your grandmother's last wishes. Let us do it. And we've seen what happens when they do it and they don't have your best interest in mind.
Thank you. And then can inmates in Illinois prisons earn a full range of degrees while incarcerated?
Just from personal, I don't know anything about a full range of degrees. You definitely ain't getting no master's or doctorate in there. What I would say is, in my personal experience, you could earn credits to get an associate's. A lot of things have changed since I've been gone, and which is good. They've got more programs. However, what they do is they only allow them at certain institutions. So there's all these prisons within the state, but only one prison, and then they tout that as, oh, that's the great model. Well, if it's that great of a model, why don't you replicate it in all of the prisons? And so that being the case, you do have access to vocational courses where you can earn certificates, whether it's, auto, HVAC, culinary arts, anything basically that's a vocational course. On the academic side,
I took a bunch of courses and they wouldn't even offer the math that you needed to graduate or the science. They'd offer all these other classes and I would ask the teachers, why don't you offer? I got more credits than I even need. I got credits for a master's degree, but I don't have enough. I don't have what I need to get my associate's degree. And he told me the reason we don't offer the math or the science is because we assume that you guys can't pass the math or science. And that would make our program look bad if the majority of the class failed. And we need that money to keep going, which is why we just give you sociology or introduction to this. And so they're great opportunities. EJP is here, Education Justice Program. So hey, check them out. But yeah, there definitely could be more.
And then, can a person with a felony conviction run for political office in the state of Illinois?
Certain offices, yes, so it depends. It's contingent upon where you are and what the office is.
Anyone in person have any questions? All right, I'm gonna keep going with the virtual ones. There used to be trade schools and night school offerings in the high schools. Do you think this would be a preventive measure for youth or helpful to those coming out?
Yes.
And then, do you anticipate positive impact of the Yards, Illinois terminal expansion, Hockett Arena investment of hundreds of millions to the segment of lower income segments of our community?
Are we talking about the hockey arena? Is that what I heard?
Mhm.
Let's see. There's potential. But given all the construction that we're seeing on campus in the past 10 years and the unemployment rate of certain communities, the high employment rate of certain communities, I think you can kind of, leave that in together and answer that question.
And then the amenities of bus stop lights, shelter, multipurpose paths is not based on need, but these guidelines listed below, which they link to a website. Since those facing reentry and their families suffer the consequences of the lack of amenities the most, does First Followers collaborate with other groups to ensure their concerns are heard by the CUMTD at this time?
Yeah, we partnered with the MTD in the past where they supply bus passes. And then there's also other organizations around town who get a certain amount of bus passes where they can hand them out to people that are coming in looking for services.
Okay. Anyone else have any other questions?
I got a question. At the point of graduation, students who are entering the field, for dreams, is there some kind of state or federal assistance, like get grants for loans for small businesses to pursue their careers, to grow the jobs?
Are we talking about formerly incarcerated?
Something like that. Like we know jobs are here there for so many people. I mean, people are somewhere having a hard time finding work or finding a job as a whole. But for students who fresh out of college with a 4-year degree, maybe a master's, and let's say some kind of incentives to get your career going and start a small business.
Yeah, especially with the government funds. There's a lot of funds that's being infused by the federal government that's passed the states that's encouraging entrepreneurship, workforce development, and to your point about startups. So there is funds out there.
All right, well, thank you so much, Marlon and Crushion, for sharing with us.